Hello everyone. Today I am going to talk on the second novel written by the American author Jhumpa Lahiri. The name of the novel is The Lowland. It was published in the year 2013 and it instantly received critical acclaim, and it was also listed in the 2013 New York Times bestsellers list. The novel was also shortlisted for the 2013 Man Booker Prize, which ultimately went to the novel The Luminaries by Eleanor Catton. Jhumpa Lahiri is the daughter of Indian immigrants from West Bengal, and she was born in London, but she was raised in the United States. Her father worked as a librarian at the University of Rhode Island. The novel centers around this turbulence that occurred in the 1960s and 1970s in India, and takes on the early days of the Naxalite movement, and also depicts the splintering of the Communist Party of India. This extreme physical and ideological violence of this period, it resonates throughout the lives of the primary characters like Subhash and Gauri and their daughter Bella. At the very beginning of the novel, we have two brothers, Subhash and Udayan Mitra, growing up in Calcutta in the 1960s. Their neighborhood, Toliganj, it's full of refugees where all those lives are displaced by the 1947 partition of India. But then the boys, they live in a modest middle class house, and the house is situated on the edge of a stretch of land occupied by two ponds. So between the two ponds there is a lowland which usually floods during the rainy season. Subhash is the older brother, 1 year older than his younger brother Udayan. He is reserved in nature, and Udayan is a little more impulsive. And as the boys grow and they enter their collegiate years, they attend separate universities. They begin to drift apart from one another for the first time in their lives. So Udayan, he falls in with a group of radicals associated with the Communist Party of India, the Marxist-Leninist, which is a splinter group of the Communist Party of India. And this group, of radicals, it has ties to the Naxalite movement. The movement uprising originally started by the poor sharecroppers in West Bengal, village of Naxalbari. And amidst this violence and unrest, Udayan, he devotes his time to the CPI party activities, and on the other hand, Subhash, he decides to pursue a PhD in America. And Udayan begs Subhash not to leave India, but Subhash eventually leaves. In America, Subhash attends a university in Rhode Island, and he is the only Indian student there. His feelings of isolation, maybe that's the reason why they increase, and to add to it, a letter comes from Udayan saying he has gone against their parents' wishes and of an arranged marriage, and he has chosen to marry a woman named Gauri because he loves her. So throughout the second year of graduate school, Subhash feels, he gets frequent letters from Udayan asking when he's coming home, and allow their parents to arrange a kind of an arranged marriage for him. And these letters, but then there's one thing: these letters never mention Naxalbari or any radical politics at all. And so Subhash, is kind of relieved that his brother has finally settled down. Subhash, he becomes involved with a young married white woman named Holly. Although he knows the relationship is not tenable in the long run, And eventually Holly ends their affair and he is kind of heartbroken. By the end of summer, he receives a letter from Calcutta telling that Udayan has been killed and he should come home as soon as he can. So he returns to Calcutta. He realizes that Calcutta has changed a lot because of this violence, and he also realizes that his brother had never given up his radical politics. So his parents are so sidelined by their grief that they barely notice Subhash's presence, and they would not even answer any of his questions about Udayan's death. Now Udayan's widow Gauri, she's pregnant, and she's also being isolated by the parents in a combination of the ritual mourning custom and also the parents' desire to edge her out of the house so that they can raise Udayan's child alone. So eventually Gauri tells Udayan how the policemen raided their house and executed Udayan point blank in the middle of the field beyond the lowland. The police even took Udayan's body and never returned it. Subhash becomes restless. He spends sleepless nights and eventually realizes that in order to keep Gauri safe, he must marry her himself and take her back to America. At first, Gauri is reluctant, but eventually she agrees. When they arrive in Boston, Gauri is 5 months pregnant. And she kind of adjusts to life with Subhash. She also struggles with feelings of isolation, and she also has a desire to pursue her education. Finally, she rips off her saris, she cuts off her hair, and she begins attending philosophy lectures at the college. Gauri does well in her philosophy class and finally admitted to a doctoral program in Boston. And at this time, Bella is in her first grade. And Subhash, somehow he becomes resentful of Gauri's desire to escape their home, their marriage, and now their child. Later, Subhash's father dies, and he takes Bella, who is now 12 years old, on a 1-week, trip to Calcutta. Bella and Subhash return from Calcutta to Providence. They find that Gauri has already left the house. She left a handwritten note for Subhash in Bengali, informing him that she has taken a teaching job in California and she is leaving Bella to Subhash. Bella is also, trying to adjust. Bella and both Bella and Subhash are trying to adjust their to the environment without Gauri being present around. She finds it a little difficult, and one day a guidance counselor calls Subhash to report that Bella is kind of distracted in school, and Subhash eventually starts taking her to see a therapist. And months pass by, and Bella eventually reaches 8th grade, and she somehow begins making friends, and she starts participating in school activities. So, and then eventually that summer, Bella graduates from high school. The summer when she graduates from high school, Subhash receives a letter telling him that his mother also had a stroke. So he returns to India, but without Bella this time, and his mother Bijoli, she dies. Years pass by, and Bella starts, kind of traveling across the country. She's living a very, unique, freedom-oriented life, and she starts working on different farms. When Subhash sees Bella, he is surprised by how politically minded and how radical she has become. And sometimes he worries that Udayan, his brother, has kind of reclaimed Bella from beyond the grave. In the meantime, Gauri lives an isolated life, but it's kind of successful because she has already published 3 books, and she has a tenured teaching job at a university in Southern California. Subhash is now a man of 60 years. And one day at the funeral of a friend from graduate school, he meets a woman named Elise Silva. Elise Silva is a widow and a former high school teacher of Bella's. Later, Elise and Subhash, they begin seeing each other. Later, in the later part of the novel, Bella is in her early 30s, living in Brooklyn, and she lives with a cooperative of artists, nomads, and radicals. And she returns to Rhode Island for a visit, and she tells Subhash that she's pregnant. She also says that she has no relationship with the child's father, and instead she wants to raise the child on her own. So Subhash eventually tells her about her parentage, and Bella says that she loves him more, knowing now all that he has done for her. One day, Gauri receives a letter from Subhash asking her to sign some papers finalizing a divorce between them. So at this point of time, she is a little she gets a little restless. She starts to recall how she was instrumental in the killing of a prominent policeman by helping Udayan in the 1970s, and she is frequently haunted by this feel, this memory. But after a week, Gauri goes to hand Subhash the papers in person and apologize for her actions. When Gauri rings the doorbell of her old house, Bella answers. Subhash is not home. So, Gauri sits with Bella and her 4-year-old daughter Meghna, trying to make small talk and find out the details about their lives. But Bella is really unhappy and she's enraged by her mother's presence, and she refuses to answer any of her questions. Gauri eventually is grieved. She leaves and she flies to Calcutta instead of London, determined to confront her past. She visits the Lowland, which has been filled in now, and it's built up. There are condominiums now which stand exactly where the place Udayan was executed. Gauri also considers committing suicide by throwing herself off the balcony of a room in a local guest house, but ultimately loses her will to die, and she returns to California. Subhash and Elise marry one another. They go on a honeymoon to Ireland. And during this honeymoon, they visit a circle of stones in the countryside. And seeing the flooding all around them, Subhash is reminded of the lowland. And he is also reminded of Udayan's death. But this time, he revisits those last moments of his brother's death from his own perspective. He imagines as if Udayan struggles to hide from the police underwater in the flooded lowland, but cannot hold his breath long enough. He worries in his final moments underwater that his dedication to the revolution has helped no one eventually, and instead it had sown only violence and discord. So this is his realization underwater before his final moments. And as the police march Udayan across the field beyond the lowland, he knows that he will die. He recalls meeting Gauri for a date one afternoon in front of a movie theater. And as the police shoot him, the bullets rip through him, his last thoughts are of the sunlight on her hair. So this is, how Subhash revisits Udayan's last moments from his own perspective, and this is where the novel ends. This is a brief summarization of the plot of The Lowland by Jhumpa Lahiri, and I hope this will help all of you. Thank you.